Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show. Hi, everybody. We are back for another 5x3 Radio podcast. We actually have a guest podcaster today with us. You will probably remember Coach Craig Brooks from our interview. God, how long ago was that? I don't know. Was that this year? Was that last year?
Time means nothing anymore.
Yeah. When did we talk to you, Craig? I can't remember.
Maybe March, February, somewhere around
was it this year? So we asked Craig to join us today for our podcast on cues. And this is expectations and reality. Not what we were talking about last time. Last time we talked about expectations, reality in regards to, your own training and goals you have and numbers you have and what's real and what a number you want to have, you want to work towards, but maybe in reality where you really are in your training. This is more for those of us who are either having coaching now, we're getting coached, and cues that our coach we might use with our lifters, and those of you who are training on your own, let's say, and watching videos as a way to help you with your own training. So I wanted to start to open this up right away to Rebecca and to Craig. Let's talk about cues. What are cues? How do we use them? And what do you, when you're working with your clients, what are some things that you discuss with them about your expectations as you're starting to coach them and work with them and cue them?
I guess I'd say one of the things that I notice a lot working with people, and Craig and I have sort of maybe a similar background in this, but I worked with a lot of people in a group setting previously. And so there's a lot of cues that you might give in a group setting that might constitute reasonable general guidelines, but they're not specific to an individual lifter.
Right.
And so a lot of people come in with these ideas in their head of what these generalized cues are from a group setting, like, oh, your knees should never travel past your toes. Like you get people who are hung up on that kind of thing, like a cue that they've heard in a group setting. Or even just cues like you're talking about watching videos or doing things a different style, like look up at the ceiling while you're squatting, these sorts of things. So, there's some general fitness world cues that are out there that sometimes I think we have to break through first and explain why that's not the cue that we're using or why that cue isn't relevant to a particular lifter. And then from there kind of move to ones that are maybe a little bit more specific to a particular lifter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It happens like that in that world, like Rebecca just said. Everybody wants to look up in the squat, keep their back as vertical as possible, because any rounding or bending of the back is going to cause back injuries.
Right.
So that right there, a cue for that to fix that, and for them to take that in accountability is tough for some people.
Yes.
To visualize.
Yeah, and a lot of people, we were talking yesterday about, so let's talk about videos, since you brought up videos. And Craig has to deal with this when he's, because a lot of his clients will watch videos, right? Everybody's on YouTube now showing what they like to do. And people will watch a video and then they'll try to emulate that person, in that video. Well, he said to do it, or she said to do it this way. So that's what I'm doing. And you're looking at them going, who are you watching? What video did you have on? Did you have it on warp speed? Or did you have it, what? And the mistake is that we try to watch, people watch too many videos. So they get a mishmash of different cues and different people, different bodies lifting. And they're not watching people who look like them. Right. And that's if you're going to watch a video of someone doing a lift, a squat or deadlift, try to find someone who kind of looks like you. because that at least will help you get an idea of your setup, right? If you're 5'2",
that's tough sometimes too, though, because sometimes people have misperceptions of what they look like. Some of us think we're taller than we are,
right?
Yep.
Like Rebecca, but yeah.
I think for the males, they get caught up in the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
They see this guy on YouTube and he says, "Oh, I'm pulling 705." So you look at that and say, "Well, if I continue to lift like him, maybe I'll pull 705." So they start mimicking his video and his technique, and then get in the gym and it's like, "What's going on?"
Right.
Such and such said I can pull 705, but here I am struggling with 305. Well, why are you doing what such and such says? You're not such and such.
Right.
And and you have this headbutting situation going on because they feel as though, well, if they're lifting this amount of weight, they have to be a pro.
Yeah, and that's interesting.
They have to be a pro because they're lifting 700 or 800 pounds or squatting this amount of weight. So they got to be better than what you're telling me what to do because they're doing it. So we get that headbutting situation going on, and then something happens. You tweak something, you get hurt. You're not understanding what's going on. And then you come back to reality like, wow, okay, let me start all over again.
That's like what you're talking about with the expectation and reality. Like that guy's doing it, so I should be able to.
Right.
And he does it this way.
We're doing the same thing. I'm deadlifting. He's deadlifting, but he's deadlifting 400 pounds more. So maybe I should do what he's doing instead of being coached on how to do it the correct way. Not saying that guy wasn't doing it the wrong way, but that's not for you.
I like you talking, Craig, when you talk about one of your clients who was watching a video of someone deadlifting.
Yeah.
And you didn't realize that he had been watching this video.
Yeah, I didn't have a clue. Deadlifting was fine. And one day he started flapping his arms. Sat up at the bar, got down and grabbed the bar, and he started flapping his arms. And I'm looking at him and I said, okay, he's warming up. Maybe he's just trying to get the kinks out. Then he added some more weight and he started doing it again. I said, what's going on here? Oh, well, I was watching a video and he said, I have to get my armpits tight. I said, well, that's not getting your armpits tight. You look like you're about to fly away off the platform. Because you're down there and you're flapping your arms and they're hitting each other like chicken wings. I'm like, well, that's not armpit tight. So I'm like, why are you doing this? Because same scenario, right? This guy's deadlifting this much of weight. If I do what he says, but that is not the expectation we're looking at. Armpits tight is squeezing them together. Not flapping.
Yeah, that's funny because it's like there are cues like that I'll use, like tight armpit, where it's like you've had the conversation with the person. They know what you mean. They know where you're coming from. They know how to interpret or understand tight armpits versus like your guy watches it on video and comes in and he's like, I'm flapping my arms around, so my arms are tight.
Flapping. Yeah. I said, oh, wow. Okay.
Well, that's
and it's the same thing. Stop watching videos.
Yeah.
Stop watching videos.
Diego had a consultation online with a new lifter, and we'd met him before in person, and he was watching the videos with him. So they were watching his videos together. And Diego's watching every deadlift, and it's just a stiff-legged deadlift. The bar is like flying away from him. Diego's like, what have you been doing? Well, I've been watching Diego's like, stop it right there. I'm going to say you don't watch any videos from this particular person.
Yep.
Stop it right there. I don't know who he told to watch the videos of, or he may have just said, don't even bother watching videos, but he just said, basically stop right there because that's not what you need. And that's a big thing too. I mean, even in the gym, right? When we're coaching people, when we're cueing people, we have to be mindful to tell, our clients, look, just because I gave that cue to somebody earlier and you saw me doesn't mean that applies to you.
Correct.
Like there's certain cues that yes, knees out. I mean, I yell knees out in the gym. Someone in the gym is going to push their knees out. And probably if you're benching or you're squatting or you're deadlifting, that's probably appropriate. Like just push your knees out. That probably is a good cue. But then there are other cues that don't necessarily apply to you that are a little bit more, dare I say the word, nuanced? that yes, they're typical, cues for like the press, elbows forward, get your elbows forward, get your knuckles to the ceiling. But then there are going to be some cues that maybe apply to you because you're 6'5" and you need a different grip on the bar. and you're going to have a different position with the elbow, or the bar is going to sit differently under your chin because of, your anthropometry and your forearm length. Just because that person looks like that doesn't mean you need to look like that. And I've seen people try to look like somebody else in the gym. Mm-hmm. And, we'll say, what are you doing? Oh, well, I was watching so-and-so lift. I'm like, yeah, but that's not who you are. Like, your body doesn't look like that body. So don't try to look like that person. Right. It's what we've given you is appropriate for you. Careful not to start to get other people's cues in your head. Usually it's the videos though. It's very rare when someone in the gym, may do that. But I had one of my friends I was working with, and I was showing a deadlift with a kettlebell. And then when she got into position, she tried to kind of match her body to look like mine. I said, no. You got long legs. I said, let me help you find the position right for you by cueing you, right? Because there's no mirror. And then when she figured it out and we practiced, it got a little bit better. I said, she said, well, I was watching you. I said, yeah, but you can't watch me because I don't look like you. I'm taller than you. I'm taller than you, but you got longer legs than I do. Right?
That's correct.
Right.
And that happens a lot, when I'm deadlifting with a client or we're deadlifting together, he's watching me the way I set up. And well, I see that you do X, Y, Z. I say, because that works for X, Y, Z. You have to find what works for you.
Right.
We discussed that before, as Diego might rev up into the deadlift.
Right.
To get set. But he takes time to get set in the position before he pulls. Right. So it's the same situation. I do almost the same thing. I just don't rev up, but it takes time to pause before I pull.
Right.
So the other individual, when he looks at me, he's pulling the bar 3 inches off the ground, and then he pushes. So I'm like, you're doing a pause deadlift mid-shin, and then you're finishing the deadlift. I said, that's not what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm squeezing my chest up.
Right.
So the bar is coming off the ground just by me squeezing my chest up.
Exactly.
You're pulling the bar off the ground, and then you're trying, I thought you were pulling the... I just told you, don't do what I do.
Do what I say.
You can squeeze your chest up. You might see the similarities of what's going on, but you're not squeezing your chest up to create this tension.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, Diego. Yeah, people do watch him, Diego, when he deadlifts, and he does. He kind of takes a couple, like 1, 2, or 3, kind of rocks a little bit. But then when he gets set in position, he pulls the slack out of the bar. You see him just kind of squeeze in position. While other people might see that, and you see them kind of trying to rev it up like it's a motorcycle.
Yes.
Like the flapping of the arms.
The flapping of the arms.
And they, I'm like, it's not. You don't rev it up. It's not a motorcycle. It's a bar, and that's not what pulling the slack out is. That's not what getting tight is. And sure, you can kind of, squeeze the shoulders back a couple times, but then once you actually get set, the bar should be in your hands. The shoulders should be back. Everything should be set, and then the legs jump in there. Yeah, it's a little tricky. Cueing people when they're not quite in the right position, and you say to somebody, okay, I need you to get into your heels, and they rock back so far into their heels, that they fall backwards. You're like, okay, no, I don't want you to do that. I just want you off your toes. Meaning, I need you in the middle of the foot. So being very mindful about like the kind of the cues that we do give, what I say versus what you do.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced that, Rebecca? Like, kind of people.
Well, I mean, like there's multiple cues you can use to get the result that you're looking for. And so sometimes, like Sadie's doing her lifts in the basement now, and I forget sometimes that like I've used a particular cue with her that might be slightly different than what I've used with another person. So like yesterday she was deadlifting, the bar was coming off her shins, and like we talk a lot of times about like you grip into your pinkies, you're going to keep the bar on your shins, you're going to wrap it in a horseshoe shape. Like imagine you're wrapping the bar in a horseshoe shape around your shins, and like I called out like horseshoe, and she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, stop talking to me. I've used the wrong cue. So it's like, the concept can be the same, but the wording can be different. That idea of like bar on your shins or gripping your pinkies or that sort of thing.
Right.
I forget what your question was.
Oh, I think just cueing people and having them do what you want them to do, and then them reacting and doing maybe something different or doing.
Yeah. And there's sometimes where it's like you'll try a cue, like Craig, you're talking about squeeze your chest through, right? And sometimes what you'll get, like maybe with a pretty flexible female lifter, instead of squeezing chest through thoracic spine, you'll get lumbar extension. And so then you have to kind of get, well, I want your abs tight. I want your just the this part of your shirt coming through. So I mean, you try different things with different people until you get the movement that works for them, and then there's usually a cue that's associated with that. Like a lot of people that I have that have trouble with that T-spine extension, I'll have them do wall slides with because the wall slide, you're kind of kept honest with the elbow and the palm, the back of the hand on the wall. You slide it down, and when you get to that part where your elbows are kind of parallel to your or same level as your shoulders and the chest kind of puffs up, they're like, oh, that's what you're talking about.
I like that.
Some people can't get into that position real easily, and it helps them to kind of build that awareness of what it's supposed to feel like versus what they end up doing accidentally, which a lot of times is not quite as much tight armpit chest through as they think they're getting. So like you try different things, like push your belly into your legs, or whatever other cue. Sometimes if you try and cue it from the opposite side of the body, so if you want the tightness on the back, you cue it from the front side. If you want the hips to go back further, you cue it from the chest. To kind of keep the focus off the part of the body that the person is like overly focused on.
Yeah.
And also cues, believe that cues got to be presented to the client in a way that they can understand it.
Yes.
I see that cues will be thrown out there that are too technical for them to understand. It could just be the simplest cue, in the press. I've used it tons of times in the press. Squeeze your butt, squeeze your butt, squeeze your butt. It's very simple.
Right.
They don't understand squeezing the butt. But I had to tell one guy, if I take my 4 fingers and shove them in the crack of your butt. You remember that, Emily? Yeah. And if I shove him, he said, oh my God, I remember that. So every time he steps back, he's like, I still remember to this day what you said about the fingers in my butt. So he squeezes his butt. Just something just as plain as simple as that. Had, I forgot his name now, he's gone. But he moved away. But it had him back in the press. And remember,
it's good that you specify it was because he moved away, not because he got scared away.
Well,
he moved away because he didn't want to do that anymore.
But it's just like, oh, that's all I needed.
Yeah.
Another member in the deadlift. Squeeze your chest up. Squeeze your chest up. I'm squeezing my chest up. I want to see your Nike sign. I want to see your Nike sign. Okay, all that's fine. But when I say show me your cleavage, bang.
Whoa.
Chest is up. And that was Liz. New member Liz. Show me your cleavage. And she said, oh my God, that's all I needed to do. So now at the bottom of the deadlift, when she sets up, she shows me her cleavage. And bang, now the back is set.
See, and
it's
that's
just the little things.
You can't get that from watching a video, because you're not going to have it's not like that. I mean, everyone's going to hear something different. Everyone's going to need something different. Nobody thinks the same way. We all think differently. We all need something real. Some of us are very, very, kinesthetic aware. So you say squeeze your chest up, we get that. You say pinch your shoulder blades together, we get that. Other people have no clue what's going on in their body. They're trying to figure out this new position. You're yelling at them a bunch of different, cues. I'm throwing out a ton of stuff, trying to see what sticks, basically, right? You throw and you throw and you throw, and then it sticks. You're like, good, that's your cue. And then I had to remember that, like you said with was it Sadie?
With Sadie. Mm-hmm.
You had to remember that, because if you don't, I've said stuff before, and I'm thinking, shit, that doesn't work. Like Diane at the gym when she's deadlifting. Man, we are having the hardest trying to help her figure out the deadlift, and we nailed it. And she's like, that's my cue. Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say that other word. Don't tell me this and rock off my toes. I don't understand what you're talking about.
Yep.
Just say this to me. And then, you put the blinders on and you don't listen to anybody else. Like, you don't listen to anybody else's cues. You just kind of stay focused on what works for you. And then I had to remember what works for her and try not to pull something else out that I'm like, shoot, that doesn't work for her. That's right. Because it'll just, screw her up.
Mess her up. Yeah.
Just mess her
Real
up.
Basic. Real simple.
Yep.
Elbows forward. People tend to use the other elbows and shrug up And I'd be like, no, not those elbows. I want these elbows. But then you have to put them in position so they can understand that, oh, these elbows, not my shoulder elbows. Correct. Not your shoulder elbows, these elbows. Like, oh, okay, I got it now.
I mean, like, I think we get that a lot because I think we get a lot of people who spend a good portion of their day at a desk or a keyboard or stressed out. And so this, like, shrug up into your ears happens all the time. And they don't even realize they're doing it. So when you want, chest up, elbows forward for your press, like you get shoulders up and chest caved.
The biggest thing, maybe we don't see this too much anymore because they've kind of fixed it, but you remember seeing a lot of people jacking their elbows up in the squat?
In the squat,
because we said elbows up. I had a woman who came about a month ago, and she's coming back to see me, and she's been watching a ton of videos. Okay, that's cool. She's trying to learn on her own. I get that, but then the elbows are totally jacked up, and I'm pulling them down. Like she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Your elbows. They don't need to be that high." But I was told, I was watching the video, and the video said elbows. I said, "That's not elbows up."
Right.
Just like this is, we don't want this. We don't want elbows under and through. We don't want elbows up here because the bar's just going to roll around on your back. I did notice the bar was rolling around a lot. I was like, yeah, because your elbows they're not up. You're not even in position.
Yeah, there's degrees to it, so somebody who doesn't have that issue but thinks like, oh, I need elbows up, and then corrects it
because they were told more. They were told the video they were watching
by somebody who didn't see what their squat looked like.
Said you need to have your elbows up because if not and it's like, no, actually this is just, oh really, that's all. I said elbows up is just this position. That's all it is. See, your elbows are up. But it's hard. You have to kind of break the habits that people have developed from watching those videos and not really understanding what exactly they're watching. Right.
So I think too, though, is like, it's not only like breaking the habits that people develop lifting on their own or watching videos or something, but over the course of a person's lifting, they might need the opposite cue at a different point. Like I remember one day when I was, early on when Jan was getting coached on, she's getting coached on her deadlift, and she had previously been coached like hips lower. She had corrected that, then overcorrected that, and then the cue was the opposite. Then the cue was your hips are too high, right? So, and that's the sort of thing that happens all the time.
All the time.
Form, they'll overcorrect, and then the like it works like the pendulum. And so like they overcorrect, the cue becomes the opposite. But it's just, she cracked me up because she just got so frustrated, and I did not expect that level of frustration and language from someone that at that point I didn't know very well. And I was like, oh, the little old lady is saying these things. And I was like, oh, that's not Jan at all. Now I know. Okay, that's cool. Now I know what to expect. But yeah, I mean, that sort of overcorrecting. So when you're talking about somebody in their toes or in their heels or whatever, but really what you're looking for is midfoot, sometimes the cue ends up sounding like the opposite of the cue you'd been given previously.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned this earlier about people, if you're going to watch videos, and it's fine to watch videos, but, as Diego says, he encourages people to watch videos of people who look like them. So if you're 6'5", try to find a 6'5" lifter so that you can see the squat position. You can see the press. It's nice to have Ryan coaching on Mondays, right, at the gym, because we've got a lot of tall people, and he's tall. So if someone's struggling, he can walk over, talk to them, kind of give an idea of like, well, this is what I do. This is how I grip the bar. This is how wide my legs are in the squat stance or deadlift, and that might really work for them. They're like, oh wow, that feels so much better, because they have longer limbs. They have a longer way to go in the press, a longer way to go in the squat. What works for me may not work for them, even the setup. So trying to find someone. And I remember when I was working on my squat, I wanted to find somebody who kind of had my similar shape. And I settled on Austin Baraki's wife and kind of watched her. I was like, that's how that's how Diego's telling me to squat. So I really watched her, and it worked. It helped a lot to watch her. Watching Nikki squat isn't going to help me. Right. Nikki's 6'1", 6'2".
Right.
Deadlift also. But watching I can't remember her name, but watching Austin,
Rain, right?
Yeah, watching her squat, I was like, oh, I get that. That looks like me. So that helped quite a bit to kind of have her visually in my head. Trying not to, I'm not going to squat exactly like her. She's a beast, but seeing the knees going a little bit more forward, the knees not so out so much. It helped a lot. So find someone who has similar proportions to you, right? That helps quite a bit, because then it's like, okay, this is something that works for them. This may work for me, but then underneath all that, you still have to find what cue is going to help you remain in position or, get that next rep. And oftentimes it may not be the person next to you. That person next to you is not you, even though, we're yelling knees out and elbows forward all over the place. There are all those little finer cues that occur that,
And it's so overwhelming when they first started out.
Absolutely.
They just fall to pieces. You just pull them to the side, and simple cues like, well, you squat to the toilet. You got a regular sized toilet. And they'd be like, yeah. I said, well, you squat to the toilet.
Right.
Yeah. I said, but you don't let your knees go forward before you squat into the toilet, right? No. I said, but you set your hips back first, right? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I want you to squat to the toilet with the bar on your back now.
Yeah.
Oh, see, so the one I use like that.
Oh, I got it. And
Yeah.
it's like magic.
Yeah.
Real simple.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, and then they come back, I was practicing my squat sitting to the toilet the other day. Yeah, I'm using the bathroom, so I'm sure you are.
You don't realize
now you're doing it the right way.
How much of your daily life you do all these different movements, right? Same thing with the squat. I do that. I'll have people, when I'm trying to get them to understand about leaning over and sitting back, I'll say, you don't sit down like this, and I'll sit down real tall, like, and they look at me. I said, if you sat down like that, people would look at you like, okay, that person's kind of weird. Why is she sitting down with like her back completely straight and like looking like she's about to fall over onto onto her face? I said, you might do that if you're wearing a really tight dress that you have to look like a princess sitting down, but that's not how we actually squat. And they're like, no, I don't move like that. Like, exactly. And that seems to click. It's like, oh, you're right.
The one I do like that is like the outhouse, right? Like when we go camping and there's the preview on the AT, like you're leaning your butt way back because you're trying to stay as far away from that as you possibly can while still in the hole.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's very simple, right? It's very simple. And then when they get that visualization in their mind, and then when they squat high, I'd be like, well, if you're squatting high here, you're squatting high on the toilet at home. So the bathroom is going to be kind of messy. You need to get a little lower. And they're like, you're right. I'm right. I know, so get a little lower.
It's funny, Craig, because I was going to say, like, what are the most unusual cues either of you have ever used? You've already tossed two out.
Well, obviously, tossed two out.
Because when I get serious with them, they don't understand it. So when I throw something out there like that, they're like, it clicks. It's like, oh, okay.
Well, this is not so much this is for kettlebell swings. I had a client who when I was teach the kettlebell swing years ago, I'd say, when you come through and squeeze your butt, you got to imagine you're catching a quarter right between the butt cheeks, and you're going to hold that quarter. So Candace, when she would swing, you would hear her count. She'd go 25, 50, 75, $1. She's catching the quarters. I go like, you got to catch the quarter. If your butt's not tight, that quarter is going to fall right out. I said, so catch the quarter. That clicked. That clicked with people. So that's a cue I've given. Catch the quarter.
It's funny.
Yeah.
It's amazing how words can change things.
Yeah. My girlfriend who I'm working with right now, she's in town for a couple months. She's on Broadway. And I went to high school with her. I was telling Craig yesterday about Bahia. And we were working on the bench. I was helping her, teaching her how to bench. And she started to figure out what her back was doing on the bench. And this is a dancer. This is someone who's been dancing her whole life. She ballet, modern. She danced for Alvin Ailey. She danced with the Frankfurt Ballet. And she's still figuring out how her body moves and what to engage. So she got off the bench and she said to me, oh, you know what? It's just like when I hold my arms in port de bras in first position and I have to open up to second. That's what I said, that's exactly it. I said, you don't have the dancers rounding their backs, shoulders forward. You tell them chest up and, squeeze everything. She goes, that makes a lot of sense. That I see what I have to do on the bench in order to stay in position. I said, Exactly. So it's like, how do I take the strength words, all the words I'm using here, and apply it to dance. And that's with RDLs, teaching my young dancers. I said, it's like doing a port de bras, except your knees are a little bit soft. And I was showing that to Bahia, and it clicked with her. She's like, that looks exactly like a port de bras, except my legs are going to stay straight, are going to bend a little bit, are going to soften a little bit. But that same idea of a flat back, the hips moving back. I mean, it's movement. It's just words are a little different, and the position is slightly different.
That kind of brings up an interesting thing that I notice a lot with people is they may know pretty well how to create the position that you're asking them to when they're oriented one way towards gravity. Yeah. So port de bras makes sense to your dancers when they're standing on their feet. You get them on the bench on their back, and it's like it's a different movement, or it's a different thing you're asking me to do, but it's really the same thing. You're just like back down to gravity instead of bottoms of your feet.
Well, as Diego said to me for years, he said, you teaching this is very similar to you teaching ballet and dance. You have an implement in your hand now that you're now using. So she has a bar in her hand, and every time she's pushing the bar away, she's she's pushing her arms forward, like a lot of people do. And I say to them, don't make your arms long, make your arms short, like keep that chest up. Once she started to figure out what I was asking her to do, and I'm shoving my hands under her shoulder blades and telling her to push down to my hands, she said, oh, yeah, it's like holding my arms in port de bras. Yes. Now just do that while you're holding on to this piece of, this piece of equipment. Yeah. Yeah.
That's all it takes. Simple cues. And they understand it and they apply it and it works. Another common cue is bracing. You tell everybody to brace and they say they understand, but then they don't brace, right? My simple cue is the punch in the gut. Real simple. If I'm punching you in the stomach, what are you going to do right now? And they're like, oh, yeah. I said, well, hold it. Just like that.
Yeah, I use that one a lot too. Diego likes
the one. Diego, the push. Yeah, I was going to say the push on the wall.
Yeah, Diego likes that
push
one.
Push your car up a hill.
Jay had one of his clients literally push one of the racks. That one of our racks that does move. He had her
prowler.
Push that.
He'd stick someone behind a heavy prowler for a little bit and be like, "Did you just notice what happened there with your?" Yeah.
Yeah, I like the sucker punch. I do that. I said, if I go to sucker punch you, what are you going to do? You're going to see that fist coming. You're going to automatically brace.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Okay, I get it. It doesn't come naturally. It takes time to process all that. That's why, we talk about cues. Cues have to be short. They have to be, because you can only hear so much. So I have to be very mindful about what cues I'm using. And then when I give the cue, sometimes I'm not talking to somebody when they're lifting and they'll say to me, is everything okay? I said, if I don't say anything, everything's fine. I'm not going to talk and open my mouth just to open my mouth and say something.
Right.
I mean, if there's nothing to say, I'm not going to say anything. And vice versa. If there's somebody I know who doesn't necessarily can't concentrate when you're talking, I wait until they're done and then maybe give them cues, and that might work for that person. Right.
Correct.
So did you ever get a new person where it's like you're trying to give the cue, you've had the conversation ahead of time, you're trying to give the cue, and they take that as an invitation for conversation in the middle of a set?
Yeah.
So the head turns.
Yeah. Frankie, I get that.
Frankie does that. Was she doing that with you, Craig?
Yes.
One of our clients, her head will turn. I'm like, don't look at me.
Right.
Just listen to my voice.
Stop talking.
That's the fastest, easiest thing for me to deal with. Don't talk while you're lifting.
Craig was doing that with Bill.
And then you got Liz. You give it a whole boatload of cues, and she's talking to him as I'm setting up under the bar. Yep. I'm squeezing my back tight. I'm squeezing my chest up. I'm stepping out the rack. I'm looking at my feet as I step. Liz, be quiet. You need that energy. Be quiet.
She's benching. Shoulders down, chest up, feet on the floor, back tight, arms locked. I was like this. I was like, she better not be talking when that bar comes out of that rack. And I like it when Craig has a client who comes once a month, and he's an older guy. And I was laughing, cracking up, listening to Craig coach. You were coaching Bill the other day. I was cracking up because you're like, stop talking. Why are you having a conversation? Just squat. And he's like,
feels heavy. I don't know what's wrong. I don't like this. I should be higher than this. I shouldn't stop talking. Just squat. That's all, Bill. You're fine.
So this comes back to a big theme with our podcasts, right? It all depends. It all depends on the person. It all depends on you, what you see on video. Just because that person is deadlifting, like you said, 600 pounds, doesn't mean you necessarily need to follow that program or lift the way that person's lifting. That's not how you're going to get to 600, right? Programs too. Right? People want to do what that person's doing, but that person is that person, and they may be just trying to, give you some information about what they do with their training, but not necessarily say, "Hey, if you train like me, you're going to."
Correct.
And they're probably not going to. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Are they? Would they? If you hired them as a coach, would they try to train? What do you think, Craig? Would they try to train you the way that they train? I mean, I guess some coaches do that. They put people.
Some coaches do, yeah.
Right.
I mean, they're familiar with their own self and their training, so they'll implement it with the client,
right,
and try to train them the same way.
Yeah.
But then that comes to the knowledge of the age, right?
Exactly.
Weight, size,
right,
what they can do and what they can't do.
Right.
Because all programs don't fit all people.
Right.
So, and that's where it goes wrong. Buy my program for $29.99, and you'll be benching 400 pounds. Right. And people do that.
Right. And then it doesn't happen.
And it's an injury. Marketing is the key. You get injured, and so.
Well, because they're not 5'11", 250 pounds, let's say.
Correct. Correct. Right.
So how's that program going to apply to them? And they're going to have to eat the same way this person eats, and they're going to have to train the same way, but they're not that person.
Correct.
So,
and that's the bottom line.
Yeah. So I think there's that too. In addition to just kind of like watching the videos, is then trying to really buy into that person's program, and just that may not be the right. Most likely, it's not. For you.
And won't put the work in. I mean, you remember we had a client that came through the door and they wanted to look like Diego. Right. Man, I was coaching him, and he was like, "Man, look at him. I want to look like him." And that was his goal, right? But he just didn't want to do the work.
Couldn't do it,
right? And he could have did the same program, which he would have been doing the same program, but he didn't have the work capacity to say,
no.
I really want to look like him, but I don't want to work like him.
No. And a lot of that work was the eating, right? A lot of that comes down to oftentimes the eating. Like he wasn't going to eat. I mean, Diego has had to eat a lot over the past 10 plus years that he's been, and he still has to eat enough to maintain what he does have. But he was willing to do that.
But that's what individuals don't see. They don't see the outside of the gym. They don't see the sleeping. They don't see the nutrition, the recovery. They just see him. Wow, he's lifting a lot of weight. When can I lift like that? Mike, the tall member Mike, seen me deadlifting the other day. He's like, wow, how much is that? I was like, it's such and such, such and such.
Right.
Well, when do you think I'm going to be able to do that? I said, Mike, I don't know. I don't know your habits.
That's right.
That's
right. Right.
That's a great
I don't know your habits.
Yeah.
You're not me and I'm not you.
That's right.
Yeah.
We might weigh the same, but we're not the same. So
right. And that's the thing. It's like, it's building habits, your own training habits, what you do outside the gym, and then what you do inside the gym, and your own program for you. And also just your own genetic potential, what you're capable of doing. And it might take years, and, if you're willing to put the work in, but it goes back to same thing with watching the videos. Just because you see somebody you want to look like doesn't necessarily mean you're going to look like that person, because that's not how your body functions. And you don't have the time to train 7 days a week, 2 hours plus a day, like that person might be. Yeah. Any other thoughts about cueing? I think we kind of covered a bunch of it. It's a good one. I don't think we've talked about with this before. So this was a topic that Diego thought might be of good interest, because I think it goes along. Good. It goes along with that expectations versus reality, of your own training too.
Yeah.
Focus on yourself, focus on your goals, focus on what you need to do, focus on what your coach, if you have a coach, has the feedback that he or she is giving to you, the program you're on, and be careful with, with who and what you're watching
Right.
as you're getting into your own training.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one size fits all.
Not at all. Not at all.
Not with cues, not with training, not with any of that stuff.
No. I usually try to send videos. If I'm sending videos to, let's say, any of my like online clients, I'm trying to find videos of people who are doing a lift in the right way. Like notice how the elbows are forward. Notice how the head is gaze, but it's not so much look like that person. It's just notice the setup. Remember I'm saying eye gaze up. See, I want the eye gaze up. See how the elbows are forward? That's what I'm looking for from you. The person could be tall, short, but generally it's just, look at where the eye gaze is, look where the elbows are, look something along those lines, something very, very simple, not like make yourself look like that person completely. Just, a visual to a written or, verbal cue that now the person has a visual to also go, oh yeah, I see that. Let me try that. Oh, wow, that works. Okay. Check. So, yeah.
Sometimes it takes, like you're saying, a lot of different methods or modes for a person to understand the cue.
Right.
Like visual, tactile, auditory, all of those things.
Right. Right. And I'm very picky about the videos I send people. Like I will go to good sources for videos. Right. I kind of am picky. Like I will go through YouTube channels and I'm typing in, like, I want to see this. And I'm like, that's a good one. That's very simple. It's short, good. And then I'm like, that one, forget that one. I'm not going to send that one. It's going to confuse the crap out of somebody. Because
I've had people
important.
Online too, where it's like, an accessory lift. I want them to do it. I can't find any video that I like because sometimes some of the accessory lifts are ones more associated with, physique or bodybuilding or something like that. And I'm just like, this video is such crap. I'm just going to like type a verbal description of what I want you to do.
Or what I'll do is I'll get one of my members and I'll say, can you do a couple squats for me or do some presses and film them. And actually, Ryan did that with one of his new clients. He sent a video of Faisal pressing and said, watch Faisal press. Because, and that's good. It's like, this is somebody who's coached by us. So you're going to see the 5x3 coaching, right? The 5x3 cues, because there is, you hear, even though Craig might say something and I might say something different, they're all the same cues, just maybe being said in a different manner for that person. You find what will click with that individual that you're working with.
I'll tell you something about that with cues, like, because it's helpful, like you're saying, to be getting cues from coaches that have the same model in mind, right? The cues are, they make more sense that way. But like there was, I just think this was interesting because there was that time where I had that, it was like an intercostal, like, one of the little muscles between my ribs was all screwed up. And so I'd been getting some coaching and some cues for my bench press, in terms of where my bar was tapping, too high, too low, whatever. And then, I get this injury and now the cues are completely the opposite. And it was so like one of those situations like with Jan where overcorrect and then the cue changes. In my case, there was an injury. I wasn't able to get the same arc. And so the bar path was different. Like my touch point changed enough so that I was like, why are these cues all of a sudden so different? Right. And like, Christian and I kind of noodled through that for a little minute or whatever. And then it was like, I think it was a little frustrating for a second. It's exactly the opposite of what people were telling me last week. But in that case, I knew everybody still had the same model in mind. It wasn't like I was getting a completely different cue from somebody who was basing it on a totally random video that they had watched. It was, there was a real reason for that, which we could identify pretty quickly then. Right.
Yeah, it's true. Things will change, based on what, whatever condition you're in, you might resort to having to train a little slightly differently. So the cues might be a little different then. Because your
and sometimes when you're injured and you're pretending you're not, it's
there's that. Right.
to pretend that there's really nothing that different.
That's right.
Until you hear the cues.
That's right.
And to bring up a point about the cues, let me touch on this one. Sure. A couple of years ago when Jennifer and Jessica did their powerlifting meet, we was all back in the squatting area because they was getting ready to squat.
Right.
So, it was other women and men back there squatting. So we squat the model. We've always squat the model.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at the other individuals over there and they're changing their squats up. And I'll go to the bathroom, I'll come back. I'm like, but that doesn't look right. I walk up to them and I'm like, what are you guys doing? You're not squatting low bar. What's going on? Oh, well, we're just watching everybody else. I said, no, get back to what you know, right? And it's funny because when they started squatting the model, the low bar style, everybody walked up to them and said, oh, you must be those Rippertoe people, because they know how we squat.
Right.
Right. And they both did well. Jen squatted like 260 and Jessica hit 308.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, we're the Rippertoe people, whatever you want to call them. And they was like, oh, you're going to hurt your back or you're bending over too much. You're going to fall forward. I'm like, yeah, well.
Why do you think they were watching other people and wanting to change how
because they got nervous. It's the nervous and oh my God, I'm around these people and they're not looking like us.
Yeah.
So it's the whole thing of like videos, I'm watching people.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to change it up day of. Like, no, that's not how we do this. You stay comfortable, but we got us here. Not, oh, well, she looks like she's doing it this way. And no. So it's the same thing. Don't watch people. Don't watch videos.
Never. I don't watch anybody the couple meets that I've ever done, definitely have never watched anybody warming up. I just kind of like put the blinders on, focus on what I need to do. I definitely don't watch anybody before I do the lift. I'm looking at the ground. I'm looking at the ceiling. I'm not watching them because if they get it or if they miss, I don't want to know. I don't care.
Yeah. When we were competing, Diego said, go in the back, go lift.
Yeah.
Don't sit out here and watch nobody.
Don't watch people. Don't watch people. I don't watch anybody. I kind of just stare at the ground and then they complete their lift. They're done. I look up and now I'm ready to go because if I see anything, this is about me. I need to focus on what I look like and what I do because everyone sets up differently. Watching the Stronger Together meet this past year, everybody who got on that platform had a different setup for the squat, had a different position for the squat, press too. Some people had the bar real high. Some people started the bar real low. Everybody has their own setup. You don't want to mess with that, especially with another lifter. Like would never try to come in and change somebody else's lifting when I know that they are being coached by somebody else. You don't do that. And you don't change as a lifter yourself, especially like the day of a meet. That's hard. That's hard to handle.
Yeah.
All right. I'm looking at the time. I know that Rebecca's got to go, so I think we can we'll wrap this up for today. Thank you very much, Craig.
Hey, I enjoyed it.
This is good.
It's nice to talk to you guys.
I know. I think we need to do this more often. Yes, I think so. I think Rebecca and I enjoy talking to each other, but it's good to have another voice in the conversation because it does. It makes us think about other things too that we don't normally think about. So thank you. Appreciate you joining us today.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, we will be back in a couple weeks for another 5x3 radio podcast. Thinking the topic might be on weightlifting for kids. That was a topic.
You had mentioned that.
Yeah, somebody. I asked a couple of my members if they had topics, and one of them said, why don't you talk about kids and how kids can do this too? I said, that's a good one because we've talked about Rebecca's daughters. But I definitely know that I've had children as young as 8 in the gym, loving what they're doing and it being completely appropriate and how and when to get kids involved in something like this. So I think that'll be our next podcast that we'll discuss. Maybe we'll have Craig join us again for that because that'd be a good one for us to talk to you about since you've had a lot of experience with working with
that'd be good
young people. Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody. We have have a great week and thank you Rebecca. Thank you, Craig.
All right. See you later.
Bye everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to 5x3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5x3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.